Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I am Brad, here with Doug.
Hey.
Dusk is a modern take on a mid-90s first-person shooter, kind of in the vein of Quake, and it runs on a similar art style, similar gameplay feel.
hmm
Something I feel like kind of got left in the wayside for a really, really long time.
Yeah, it was. I think the idea was that Half-Life kind of just changed everything, and then everything started kind of going the Half-Life route, which is like these sort of like very story-centric first-person shooters. Half-Life 2 did that. Call of Duty, they all kind of moved in that sort of more story focused first person shooters, which I actually really enjoy. But this sort of 90s take is like much more. There is kind of like a story, but it's the story is told through like you're in this level, you're here, in this level, you're here, in this level, you're here, as opposed to there being like a real narrative, so to speak, in the games where characters are talking at you. You mostly just shoot
Fun,
people, they don't talk to you.
yeah, fun, fast-paced, and you're like, I'm sure there's some through line that I never
Yeah.
paid attention to once, but I'm sure it's there.
Yeah, no, exactly. It is exactly that. Um, it's a it's a really really cool game because I think the one thing that I keep seeing with a lot of just games in general is that they will do callbacks to better games than the one you're currently playing. Like they'll take direct gameplay mechanics from okay, let's say for a game that's has climbing on big giant things. Like you're immediately thinking of like Shadow of the Colossus. So you're immediately going to compare it to
Yeah,
Shadow of the Colossus, which is kind of a dangerous game you're playing because it's like, when I'm playing those games, like I think I'd rather just be playing Shadow of the Colossus.
yep,
The thing that's fun about this game is the people are like, instead of like making better games and like the best games all the time, I'm not saying Quake isn't, but the idea, it seems like I think we could make a better Quake than Quake was. Because it's really funny. I actually had played Quake recently, so I had played Quake maybe last year, and then I started playing Dusk, and I was like, oh, they took this formula and just did it much, much, much better to the point where it's like, not that I wouldn't play Quake again, but it's just like, oh, if you want that sort of Quake style game, like they did it way, way, way better.
does
Um,
does that
mhm.
feel like an element of time of like we've had 20 to 30 years worth of development to kind of improve that, or is it if
Yeah.
is that where it's coming from? It's not like, okay, like, you know what I'm saying, like it's an element of time more so than an element of just like they didn't have the
It's
ability to do this in the 90s.
No, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say. No, I mean they definitely could have done this in the '90s. Like um, it's it's like really really basic geometry, really really fast paced gameplay. I'd say there's nothing in here that screams that it came out from. Like I'd say more so than most games that like retro modern games. Like this game, I 100% could have believed it came out during like the Quake era, just for how it's set up and like just the level geometry and stuff. So it's nothing beyond that Quake couldn't do. But I think that there's just like a different thesis to how it does level design. Um,
Okay.
the thing that's really cool, the thing that I kind of it taught me that I missed was individual levels in games. Usually now it's like when they talk about levels, like you're kind of like going to just think of like Horizon, like oh you're going to the beach zone area, and the zone's a little bit
Yeah.
different. There's just very few games these days where it's like in this like level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But this game is like very explicitly broke up into 3 episodes, and each of those episodes has about 10 different levels. And the thing I really like is that each level, something unique has to happen in each level. So, like in this level, this one takes place in a small town. In this level, this one has to take place in a mine. In this, so it makes like every level like you can think back to moments from those levels
Yeah.
because they're just so segmented. Um, and then the level design is just really cool because I think in the original Quake, it all sort of takes place in a very similar sort of dungeony, castle-y area.
Yep.
Um, but in Dusk, you're clearly moving. That's kind of where the story kind of takes place, which we talk a little bit about. But you're clearly like moving from one place to another and like going through the level. So like, okay, I start in a small town, then I go through a mine, and then I end up over here, and then I end up over here, and then over here. So it really feels like your character is actually traveling, which I feel like is kind of missed sometimes with games like just because like I'm just thinking mostly like open world games where it just feels like you kind of like get to the beach area, it's like oh there's some neat stuff there, but there's not a lot that differentiates the beach area from the forest area, except
hmm
this one takes place in a beach and this one takes place in a
The
forest.
the Halo Infinite problem, where every Halo
Oh
before that is like
yes.
this level, this level, this level, this level, or it's like you
hmm
can specifically call back to each level, and Halo Infinite is like, oh, there were some trees, and this one had a canyon.
Yes, exactly. You can't point to like singular moments. Like you have your own sort of personal moment with Halo, but it's hard to point to like exactly what, within Halo Infinite, like exact moments. I do want to talk a little about the story because I think the one thing that's kind of important, like first person shooters, is I think nowadays, just because graphics have gotten so good, there's a sort of like morality complex with any first person shooter you play. Like it really has to justify why you're shooting people. And like Call of Duty or
Yep.
even Titanfall, it's like, okay, I'm a military guy shooting other military folks, and like maybe they're terrorists or maybe this, and but they are people, and we're gonna make a point of that in our story. The thing I like about Dusk is that they are all super evil cult members that look like KKK members. So just shooting people willy nilly. Absolutely. I'd say it's like similar to like the recent Dooms where it's just like absolutely no moral quandary here.
No
Just
connection here. It's
shooting
just
up
a
a bunch
big
of
funky hell monster, and I'm gonna kill the big funky hell monster.
yeah, so it's like Hell Monsters mixed with cultish KKK guys, and it's just like nope, nothing, and it's just so fun. It's like it's super fast paced. It's really similar. Well, I said Quake. It actually reminds me. It definitely borrows from a lot of stuff. So it kind of like it's doing a Quake like thing, but it's borrowing from a lot of other shooters during that time. So it's like really there's serious Sam sections where there's just like a ton of people in a wide open area.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of in sort of tone similar to Painkiller, which was a it's you're an angel fighting demons in hell, but it's different than Doom, I promise. But it just sort of has that kind of sort of occulty sort of like actually Quake had kind of touched on this a little bit, but it didn't. The series didn't go too deep into it. Where it actually does have some of those like Cthulhu mythos stuff, and this one's like, oh no, what if we actually just have a cult that's about that, and then you kind of get deeper and deeper and deeper into like them tapping into the extraterrestrial, not extraterrestrial, whatever the madness realm sort of thing.
Yep.
So it's more in that vein. And it is just kind of cool because it is pulling from not just Quake, but like all these other games I really love. And that's the thing I really like I was saying with those individual levels, like you would have the serious Sam level or the serious Sam moment, and that's different than a really tight sort of horror based level where it's like really tight corridors in a really dark area. So it's just fun that the game's like kind of moving through different tones as well as you're playing it. I think that was the thing that kind of like kept me pulling me forward is, and I think just like any game, it's got to keep my interest up. And it's not just enough. This game like just started to be like, okay, let's make a game that's kind of like Quake. But then it's like, okay, how do we make that interesting nowadays? And the whole thing is just like, let's make these levels interesting. Let's make it go through different areas. Let's make these enemies things you've never seen before. Let's put some jokes in. Let's make it serious in these moments. So it's like these really big epic moments as well. So it was cool just like playing that sort of, I guess you'd say like modern level of intrigue. I don't know what you would say, like intriguing games.
Yeah.
That
So
like, well, like
that's
Quake
where
is one note. Yeah.
That's where the iteration comes from. Is it's not like we just remade Quake, but we remade Quake with like 30 years of people like this element in their games, people like that element in their games. So the iteration isn't that like this isn't technically a game that couldn't have been made, but it's iterating on that based on the things that have come in between there and going, okay, what if we did Quake and we took so seriously and we took these other elements? So that's where that elevation from Quake comes from that you were talking about before. Is that kind of what I'm getting?
Yeah. And I'd say even like the kind of like and I think Quake is like really one note. Quake is just like I said, it's like just a dungeon game. And then this one, it's just like I was saying, it pulls in all those different levels. So it is, but even when it goes into the Quakey like levels, there's just something about the level design that's just like so interesting. Like for example, there's this one that like takes place in just a town square, and you keep like kind of wrapping back around into that town square, wrapping back around, you keep ending it back in that town square. It's just like this wholly unique design of a level. You're still shooting guys, you're still doing that. But it felt like, oh no, I remember that one. I remember the mine one because it was really creepy. I remember the lab level because they did some really cool things there that they only do in that one level. And I think it's just because we've talked about this before, but like games when there's like modern games with such low fidelity, they can kind of go crazy and do what they want. And then this one just kind of went crazy and did what it want on top of everything else. So it's just a super really cool, super fun game. I played on PC. I don't know how you would play this on a console.
The same way people play Quake on a console, which I did.
Sure, yes, you can.
Or try to play Serious Sam on one, which I did because I never played PC games really. So, yeah, it's doable. I'm sure it's not something I would want to compare to somebody playing on PC, but I'm sure you can make it work.
But when you're like flying around doing backflips and bunny hopping and like shooting guys from like 100 yards away with like a zoomed in sniper rifle, I can't imagine. I'm sure it works fine on those consoles, but like if you just ever enjoy those like sort of like early shooters or just like in like a good version of those, this is definitely the game to play.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of untapped too. I feel like we're slowly getting to the era of mid 90s and early 2000s being the like cool retro stuff, which makes me feel a little old, but like I'm done with NES games. We're getting past SNES, so let's get to the PlayStations and the PlayStations 2, guys.
I really, really hope that's what's happening. And I think this is kind of like indications of that, but I keep seeing more and more, not more, but I keep seeing like pixelated platformer games. Like I think it's kind of tapped out on pixelated platformers, but the PS1 and PS2 era, it's like there's plenty of stuff to mine there.
Come on.
Yeah. I think it's just kind of cool that they, instead of mining ideas that have iterated a bazillion times over, it's like, hey, let's just go back to this one idea that maybe didn't get 1,000, 100, like 20 over. Years of It's like, stop making Souls-like games. You're never gonna beat Souls, but you could maybe beat a PS1 game. Maybe.
We are Workforce Gaming. You can follow us on Twitter at Workforce Gaming. Subscribe to us wherever you're listening, and we will see you later.
Bye.